talk about the Yale Drama School.
Yes.
Tell me how you got there, why you went there, and what you did there.
Well, let's see, how do I begin? I was, before that, it was all my dancing. You know, I mean, it went from Lester in LA, that was my LA time, and the films that I made and all that. And when Lester passed away, I came to New York, which is like coming to Oz, and had all that series with different companies and the Met Opera and early television with John Butler. In fact, John Butler, in a way, funny kind of way, connected me because there was a piece that I did with Mildred Dunnock. And he would use text and movement. I would do the movement part, and there's like Vera Zorina. I did something with Vera Zorina. And that was John's, it was a wonderful creating works like that. And it was a poem by Francois Villon of an old lady looking back on her life. And I was Mildred Dunnock as a young woman. And she was just an absolutely extraordinary woman. Well, time moves on, all right? Also, during the time when I was in New York, I met Alvin Epstein, who worked with Geoffrey in Twelfth Night. I remember they played the Zanies in some production of Summer Stock. I can't even remember well, but anyway, I met Alvin. And in the meantime, I worked with Alvin Epstein on The Story of a Soldier for television. In fact, Brock Peters was in it. He was the narrator. And Barry Orbach was the devil, and Alvin was the soldier, and I was the princess. And as life has it, when during that time, John had given up a company. I was working with Glenn Tetley's company, and that was breaking up. So it was like there was a whole change going on in the dance world and in my life, and I didn't have a company. I didn't, thank goodness. I tried it once to have a company, but it's too much. I'm not that kind of person. And by chance, Mildred and Alvin were in a production at Yale called The Back Eye. And I can't remember whether it was Millie or Alvin. No, it was probably Millie. I had just finished doing a television, a half hour for one of the morning shows. And Mildred asked me to come up and see The Back Eye. And she said, you can spend some time with me overnight. So that's what I did. And I met Alvin again, and I met Robert Brustein. And I saw the production. I thought it was wonderful. That was before the Yale was at, the theater was in the church. This was on the main stage at Yale. And I saw it, and then I left, went back home, and I don't know what I was doing. I was finishing up with Glenn's company. I think we were out in Ohio someplace finishing up the run. And I got a telegram from Robert Brustein asking me if I'd like to come and join the company as teaching the actors movement. And I think surely between Millie and Alvin Epstein, it really worked out very well. And I thought, well, why not? And New Haven and New York is like a commute. and Geoffrey, thanks to his generosity, let me do all this running back and forth to New Haven. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me. And little did I know when I came to the company that I was thrown right into production with Larry Arick. They were doing a production called Story Theaters, Paul Sills Story Theater, where we tell stories and act them out. And it was a special kind of theater. And that was the first time I really had to use my voice, and that was a very painful experience, I must say. It's like using a new muscle. I had to get used to that kind of, I knew the stage. I was perfectly comfortable on the stage. I was perfectly comfortable moving on the stage. But it's getting the voice out, because dancers, as you know, don't use their voices very often. They do now. It's very interesting. They do a lot of text now. And And that's how I got, and at the same time I was teaching movement to the actors. So in a funny kind of way, I was learning from them and they were learning from me. So it made a very happy combination. And besides which was lucky for me, in New Haven, I think people knew I was a dancer, but not like they do in New York. It's stamped on my forehead. It's like, no matter what I do, dancer, that doesn't make any difference. It's just, it's branded in everybody's brain that I'm a dancer and not anything else. So in New Haven, I got a chance to be free and learn. And when there was a review, it wasn't that they knew that I was necessarily a dancer, you see. So I was treated and reviewed as one of the other actors. And that was wonderful. I couldn't be in a better place because the company at that time, the instructors like Alvin Epstein and Robert Lewis, who was a director, and people like that, were almost everybody was part of the company. The teachers were part of the company. They would do the older roles, the people, the mature roles, and the students did the ingenue roles, you see, and that's the way that school worked. So we were all co-workers. So I would teach them in the morning movement and how to use but I didn't expect them to be dancers. I don't believe in that. I think actors should be who they are because I find that acting is sort of like, it's earthy. It belongs to the earth. Music, poetry, dance, and the arts are like the air. You know, they're someplace else. And I don't think that the actors have to be comfortable in their bodies with trying to be dancers. That's not, they have to move like people. If they have to move or even dance in a scene, they have to be people and not thinking that I'm a dancer dancing. So I always treated the dancers like the actors that way, and we had a wonderful time, and I learned a lot from them. They're absolutely fearless, which is great fun. You see, because dancers are told what to do, how to do, and you never talk back to the choreographer. Rarely, if ever. Rarely, rarely. I mean, it's like being in the army, actually. And that has its good points and then not so good points. But I learned so much, and the interesting thing is that when I went back to dancing, my work changed. Because I found it interesting sitting around the table and they would talk about the roles that they were going to do, and the background of the characters, and they would make up these whole scenarios about the character that were not even in the play, so that they could get to the point that when they get to that scene, they know what they're talking about. And I found that really absolutely fascinating. Well, of course, it was a new experience for me, and memorization was just muscle memory is one thing. Words, something else. And everybody had a different way of doing it, you know. So I had to find my way, and it was the most terrifying thing. Of course, when I go up in a line, it was just, I thought I was going to die, where a seasoned actor just finds something to do and goes on, you know. But it was a big step for me, and that was when I asked, Geoffrey came to teach one of the classes one day, and he taught the James Weldon Johnson's The Creation. And I watched the class, you know, and then I said, Geoffrey, can I have it? You know, I want that piece. And of course he said yes. And that's when I started putting vocals to speaking and moving. But of course I had that experience with John Butler with Mildred Dunnock. I was not the person who was speaking, and Zorina. But eventually I even, with Zorina I did the Chanson de Belleti's, and the poems of Pierre Louis. And eventually I did it by myself. I decided I was going to do that piece by myself. So I started working in that kind of, I suppose, I don't know what you call it, but it's just dance took me, I should say, speaking for myself, took me just so far, and I just felt something else had to happen. And I think by adding words, it helped me a lot. And I loved acting because it was a whole different way of feeling your the words would yes, you can dance your emotion, but sometimes words, you have to add the words to finish the sentence, so to speak. And I found that my work got deeper, and I found that so the two worked extremely well for me. And like I said, the actors, I found, taught me an awful lot. They might have been young. You see, I remember, yes, I taught Meryl Streep, yes. But I remember watching her, and I just watched, and I said, well, there it is. I mean, you can see people who just have it. And then yet, at the same time, I've seen people who start out, talented, and then it gets richer and richer and richer and richer. So I decided, everybody has a different length of time to grow. Some are slow growers. It's like plants that don't bloom until years later. And there's some that pop up all the time and they have it right away. So that kind of relaxed me in a way, but it takes me I'd say a long time. I'm one of those slow growers, actually. It takes me time. Because when you're dancing all your life and you're used to your brain working a certain way, and then it has to shift, it takes a while. It really does. So it was a happy, painful experience at times. But I was very proud of myself, actually, because I was going through some of my albums of Yale and the reviews, and I thought, gosh, I didn't do badly considering that I was, learning at the same time. Robert Lewis, one of my first big plays was Strindberg's Crimes and Crimes, playing a role of Henriette, a kind of a wonderful kind of character. But vocally, I remember him and saying my lines and whatnot. He wouldn't say, "You're not speaking loud enough." All he would do is walk across the front of the stage with with his hand by his ear, and that would let me. I can't hear you, dear, And the actors themselves, we became friends, the young people. And if I was on the stage and with them in a play, and class was at 9:30, I was there at 9:30, ready to start the class. And there's no argument if you come in late, because I was working too. And to this day, we still have a feeling of camaraderie. It's really rather nice. I'm actually now, when I'm working on as you know, in my evening, my director, Joe Grafassi, was one of my students. So you see, who's a very fine director and actor. But I found that a very, very rich, and learning plays and words, language. Kenneth Haig, a very fine English actor, was a master at language, especially Shakespeare and I can't remember the other form right now because my brain is racing. And he taught me a lot about language. In fact, there was another actor, Jeremy Geit, and his wife Jan. We would meet on Sundays, and everybody would sit down and read poetry. Shakespeare and Milton and wonderful things like that. And you get to fall in love with language, and different playwrights, and Adrienne Kennedy even performed one of her plays, and it was a rich place, to work, because you had the main stage, you had the actors' projects, you had the playwrights' projects, you had the cabaret. You had all those things. Everybody was working in all those things. So it was a working theater. Robert Brustein made a working theater. It wasn't so much classroom. It was really work. And everybody worked. Even Mr. Brustein, Robert, performed at the cabaret with his wife. Everybody worked Alvin was, Epstein worked in the cabaret. I worked in the cabaret. And there were all these openings, and it's just absolutely wonderful. I don't think there's a school or theater like it ever since. I know that it finally went to Yale, to Harvard, but it's not the same thing as it was at Yale. And then you had guest artists like Christopher Walken come and act, or directors, guest directors, and it's extraordinary. Music, we had musicals that we would do, like Kurt Weill, Mahogany, And then I suppose, when I was there, one of my favorite things, aside from a number of pieces that I did, was Midsummer Night's Dream, and directed by Alvin Epstein. And we had music by Henry Purcell's Fairy Queen. And we used the music, we had the musicians from the music school. Oscar Werner Müller was the conductor, and we had all the music, singers. So it was the most beautiful production. I think of Midsummer Night, talking about myself, but it's the whole production that Alvin put together. I thought was really quite wonderful. And I was privileged to perform, my first Oberon was Christopher Lloyd. Oh my goodness, did we have fun. And I was Titania. By the way, everybody, I didn't dance it. I actually performed it. I acted, well, I did move a lot in it. So there was a lot of movement in it. And my actors were wonderful. Meryl was in that, and Joe Grafossi was in, wonderful, wonderful people. And I could give my actors, I would let them invent. I would just tell them what I would like and then let them invent it, you see. So we worked together on all the movement. It was magical. It was a magical production. And I've never forgotten that.
You said you were looking through your scrapbook. Have you got physical reviews and things from Yale? Because
yes, I have. Well, there's one special one, my review that I got in Newsweek, and a picture of myself as Titania. That was like a love letter. I've never. I mean, when it came out, I was embarrassed to go to go back. All I could do was hang my head because it was such a glowing review by Walter Kerr. And so, yes, and so I have that in very big picture I will get you with the review. It was really quite wonderful. It was a beautiful review for the whole piece.
There's not much about you and Yale in what came.
Well, not much of it. Somehow things get lost sometimes, you know, when in translation or interviews and things like that, you know. But right. I was there almost like 8 years or something like that. So I did quite a number of plays, and
a big chunk of time.
A big chunk of time, and but like I tell you, it's an experience I will not forget. And Alvin and Robert Brustein, they were very kind to me, and Mildred Dunnick and all the people that I met and worked with. I can't say, you know, like training them. No, we worked together, actually. And I'm so proud of them all. I mean, it's very nice to see them, you know, like becoming stars and things like that. It's just beautiful. And there are too many names to mention right now.
Let's go back to you in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about your family.
Well, I'm an East LA girl, you know. Early on, I lived in Vernon City. That's well, actually Willowbrook, out in Long Beach. You know, I remember the big earthquake. I must have been just a tyke, you know, but I remember the shaking and whatnot. But lived in Vernon City a bit, and with my what is it, 37th Street or something like that, and there's that little Vernon City Grammar School, and there was a little church next to it with St. Martha's. And it's such a tiny church, and I go back and see it, it's just tiny. And Father Ramirez, it was a mainly Mexican neighborhood. It was my mother's family, my mother's family and my father's family are from Louisiana. My mother's family were in New Orleans, all born New Orleans people, and my father's family were like Marksville, Alexandria, all up in that area. And it seems when everybody migrated out of Louisiana into California, the Grenos went in the Mexican neighborhood, and then my dad's father went in the black neighborhood, and it was. And evidently, looking back on in the history of my mother's family, there were Spanish-speaking people there. So I said, oh, well, that makes sense. Okay. So, but eventually, my mom got unfortunately ill, and that split the family. All right. So I hadn't seen my mother's family in years and years and years and years and years. And so when my dad took us, and he was a single dad with 3 girls, raising us for a while. He was quite a man. He raised all our food, and he was kind of a farmer in his way. We always had fresh food, you know. We always had ducks or chickens or something that we had for food, because that was the Depression. You see, so he was providing for his girls. And it wasn't until later time where his sisters picked up and grandmama picked up and helped out with us. And later my Aunt Adele, who, by the way, had the first, in those days, Negro bookshop on Central Avenue, all Black history. And it was a very famous, the Hugh Gordon bookshop. It was very, very well known. She was an extraordinary lady and a communist. I have to laugh about it. Oh yes, Auntie. She was a wonderful person. I remember having to put the pamphlets and we'd go to the meetings, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But after that, you know, she was an extraordinary person. And so we, you know, went to George Washington Carver Junior High School and Jefferson High. You know, we had, and I met Alvin actually at Carver, and then we went to Jeff. And O.C. Smith was our, you know, we had a great, he was one of our, my buddies, the same class. And at the same time, at that time, I think in my last year or so, that's when I started to take my dance classes in Hollywood with a woman named Melissa Blake, my first dance teacher. And then I had, that's when I later on got the scholarship with Lester Horton. And then he helped me, sent me to Carmelita Marachi for my ballet work. And they were all extraordinary people, you know, and so I would go from East LA, I would travel on the buses, streetcars, anything, all the way out from the way west side, on the, you know, Washington Boulevard and Hooper Avenue from class. It took me about an hour and a half to get to my, out to Hollywood and Highland was when I first went. And my dad would pick me up sometimes, and you know what that looks like now. Hollywood and Highland, and actually Carmelita's classes were out there too on Highland, and then Lester's theater was 7566 Melrose Avenue, the famous Melrose Avenue. So and it was an extraordinary place. I mean, Melissa's was just a regular little storefront dance class, modern and ballet class. Lester's was a created dance theater. It had like little 10 rows of little molded plastic seats, you know, and like benches. And we had, our classroom was the stage. We didn't walk in a classroom with bars and mirrors. We didn't, and there were no such things. And I think that was a blessing, because you were really concentrating on yourself and not looking in a mirror at somebody else, so that your attention was in the mirror. And so I can't work in front of a mirror. I can't learn well in front of a mirror, because my brain is constantly looking over there instead of concentrating here. And I learn much quicker when I'm not facing a mirror. That's for me, but that's
what you look like.
Yes, well, you know what you feel like, you know, because Lester would say kinesthetic sense, you know, when your arm is out to the side or something, if it's up, he'd tap it, and then you'd have to feel it. You'd have to look at it. You felt it. So it works much quicker. When somebody corrects you, you know what it is. If they say your shoulder's high, you just drop it. You don't have to look at it to do that. You know what it feels like, and you just have to tell you what you have to do. So I think it was really wonderful. I think the training was extraordinary. It was only like 10 rows of seats, which means your concentration is really at its height, which means there was a time when I was working, I would never know who's in the front row. And that could just be a few feet away. You can concentrate that well. And he also, not only did you have to rehearse, and perform on weekends. You had to teach some of the classes for the children. You had to, before performance, you would have to be there early to prepare your costumes and iron your costumes and get everything ready. and warm up, and then after the performance, you had to clean up the theater. You had to do a.
Okay,
Oh, we were talking
again.
about Lester and the training.
Right.
Yes, and you know, and I taught the children, and they got to be quite good. We started a dance theater too, with the young people, and it was they were all girls. Unfortunately, we couldn't get any boys in there, but they were extraordinary, and they all grew up to be quite wonderful young ladies. And Lelia Goldoni, who now just got through performing in a Beckett play solo. We talk about. I knew her when she was 15. And we talk about that time and how well we were trained. Everybody had the same experience about Lester's theater. Bella Lewitsky was the person who was the main dancer, and she was one of my mentors too. So I had it pretty good. I mean, I got in on the. Yeah, I really did. And you know who was part of that company was Rudy Gernreich. You know the designer? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we became very good friends. Rudy was very special way of moving. I love to watch Rudy move. But he was a wonderful person. So needless to say. And Lester working in films, you know, that's how he made money to help finance his theater.
Right.
He even knew Maria Montez of all things, you know, and I would get these little jobs, you know, doing the things like the Golden Hawk and and what is that? Leo remembers Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein or some silly thing like that. One of those things I did. I was some kind of little lady doing the, you know, I don't know. And do my little movie things, you know, Demetrius and the Gladiator and the Egyptian and all that kind of stuff. So it was really kind of fun. I think my favorite was Demetrius and the Gladiators is because I worked with Susan Hayward. I was her handmaiden. Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh yes, she was a lovely lady. But you know what I always remember about her? Of course we were, you know, you never could see these kids really have it now. I mean, they're stars in the movies now. My gosh, and they're even making money. But we had to do the best we could do is be a handmaiden, just about, or sing something, and then they just cut to you and back again. But I remember it was in 20th Century Lot. It was all a big lot. It was empty with all those wonderful flats and things and false fronts and buildings, and oh, it was wonderful. And we were working the gladiators, you know, their arena. Their arena was out in the back lot or something. And I remember having to walk out there. And after the shoot, I was walking back, and it was kind of dusty and, you know, long hike. And this car drove up, and it was Susan Hayward. She said, "Get in," and she drove me back to the dressing room or wherever it was. And I didn't say very much, but she had this lovely profile and the red hair and kind of burnished hair. And she was playing the Messalina, one of the empress. And I looked beside her, and all the books of Messalina were there. She had history books there. And I found that really quite interesting. And I thought to myself, she didn't have to pick me up, you know. She didn't have, this was Susan Hayward. She did not have to do that. She did not, and I've always been grateful to her, but I thought that is really a lovely lady to do that.
Her son and I are friends. Tim Barker.
Really? Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Well, I never forgot her. I never forgot that kindness. I never forgot that kindness. Ever. I'll never forget that.
For the day and the time, that was extraordinary.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and Woody Strode was and Tank Younger were and I always went to the commissary with these two great, big, wonderful men. To the commissary, they were my protectors. Yes, yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah, I love 20th century.
Yeah.
You know, and
I remember the last time I talked to you when I was doing a Dorothy Dandridge special.
Right.
And you talked to me about dancing in Carmen Jones, and you said the funniest thing. You said, we would turn up in one scene in a sailor costume,
That
or the
was
guys
Alvin.
would be in a sailor costume,
Yeah.
and the next time they would be in an army outfit.
That was Alvin.
They didn't have, yeah.
Yeah, Alvin
You
would
tell me
just.
that's,
Well, Alvin would just, you know, we were working like crazy, and I think he must have sweated through one suit or whatever, and then next thing you know, he's got another thing. it was hard work that, but out of Preminger, and there here's our tie. It was Herbert Ross was the choreographer of that, and that's the first time he choreographed for film. And we would do the last scene first. You know, you don't shoot in sequence necessarily, and it drove him crazy. And I remember him saying, "Is this the way they make movies?" And I said, "Yes, yes." And he said, "I'm going back to television." And I reminded him of it, and he became this big, you know, director of movies later on in life. And I also worked with Jack Cole. That's where I got the. Alvin Ailey was supposed to dance this voodoo dance and Lydia Bailey with me, and he got sick, and it was ready to shoot time, and Jack Cole said, I'll dance the part. And I said, oh. So he said, well, he made himself up to look very dark. In fact, I think it was Michael Cortez was the director, and he wanted everybody, pick the darkest person he could find, and said, I want them all that color. Well, we were all different colors, to the very dark to the very fair, and there was one girl named Florence who had blue-eyed, green eyes, you know, as our folks will do. And James Truitt, one of my very dear dance friends at Lester, had done some movie, Mighty Joe Young, and he told me about a makeup that they used on him, which was called Negro Number 2. And I thought it was a tale. Except I was the specialty, so I went to the dressing room. Now I'm waiting for my special makeup, you know, and whatnot. And I saw this makeup, and sure enough, I looked there, it was Negro Number 2. So Jack and I wore Negro Number 2. He looked terrific. The rest of us looked terrible. Because our colors, it was made for a Caucasian skin. We'd have different undertones, as Geoffrey taught me. And when you put it on anybody who's mixed, it just turns kind of green and kind of ugly. So Jack looked terrific. And he was, of course, the scariest person in the world to work with because he was a taskmaster. And fortunately, he was very kind to me, but I was scared out of my wits to dance with that man. It's like dancing with a tornado. But he really made you do your best work. As he always said, you know, I don't want you to be good. I want you to be very good.
yeah.
So I always remember, and I remember our last shooting, he said, well, now go home and get some rest. I said, no, I have a performance tonight, because I had to do Salome that night. I was working on those weekends. And he looked at me, he said, don't lie down, don't take a nap, just keep going. Get some food and keep going. Otherwise, your energy is going to drop. I never forgot that. So needless to say, I had some wonderful experiences in LA with film, and of course to make money, fortunately or unfortunately, Lester we did our little nightclub at Ciro's to make money. Oh, that theater we had, and of course it was a breakup when Bella left. It was all, unfortunately, it was during that McCarthy period, and Lester was not a political person. I think what he did by mixing up the company was political without even saying anything. Because after Bella left, it became a rather mixed company with just everybody in it, all kinds of people in it. And I think that's what I loved about him. He just wanted to do his dances, and he had his way of saying it being political without waving, but that was his way of running his life. And Bella had her way. So, but there we are. But she was very generous to me, and she taught me Salome, which she danced, and I will always appreciate. She was always very kind and still very helpful, and a very, very fine teacher.
Great. Can you talk to me about Janet?
Janet? Yes, Janet was like, She was 10 years older than myself, and so when I would hear Janet was somebody that was like, not a figment of my imagination. I just knew that I rarely got to see her, but all I knew is that I wanted to be like Janet because she danced. And I was always jumping around and dancing. I always want to be like Janet. I always want to be like Janet. And when we have family gatherings, and Janet would blow into town with Bobby Short or something like that. And she was like, oh my goodness, this extraordinary lady. You know, it's like a movie star. She was my movie star. And I got a chance to see her dance at the Wilshire Ebell. She performed in her solo concert. And I've never seen anything like it. And everybody says the same thing. She could be on one side of the stage, and your eye is there, and the next thing you know, she's gone. She's on the other side, and you never knew how she got there. She had, beautiful, fast and quick and nimble and just delicious. Well, at that time, you know, she worked with Catherine Dunham, and she and Tally Beatty became partners, you know, doing adagio work, which was a big thing, and they passed themselves off with a couple of Latin people because you can't say you were black. I can't remember, De Guerra, Leo and something De Guerra, Rita Enrica De Guerra or something like that. And they would do their adagio, and then eventually she ended up just being a soloist. And of course she went to New York and became a huge success at the YMHA. She had her first big concert, and she became an absolute smash. And at the YMHA, it was like being on Broadway for dance, you see. They were an extraordinary place. And then she was in, I do believe she went into the musical Out of This World, and was a huge success. And she was at the Met, and this, you know, so her career is really rather unusual. But it was difficult because you couldn't be a part of a company. You know, in her book, there's a wonderful book. Did I give you that book?
No.
I'll bring it with me. It's called Night's Dancer by Yael Lewin. And Janet relates it, and she had an audition with Ballets Russes, Leon Messine. And she did a beautiful job of her auditioning, and even the company loved her, but he said she would have to paint her skin light. And he said, you wouldn't want to do that, would you? And I don't think he meant it in an unkind way, you know. And she said no, and she left, and she cried the whole time. She was about 16, 17 years old. It was terrible, because you couldn't go into dance classes. She had to have private classes outside that. Tally Beatty was the same thing. He was not allowed in the class. They'd open the studio, and he can go in there at 5 o'clock in the morning if he wanted to. But you couldn't take the dance classes. So she and Tally and that group, even the Dorothys and people, they had, and I was thinking Nina Mae McKinney, remember Nina Mae McKinney?
Oh, yes.
Holy cow, and Freddie Washington. Oh my goodness, extraordinary actors, extraordinary. And I look at the young people now, and I thought, oh, you have no idea what the rest of the people went through so that you can have this privilege. You have no idea. I hope they really realize it, because it's unheard of. It really is. It really is.
And listen, my friend Smokey Robinson says, fame makes you just more of what you already are. Mm-hmm. So if you're a jerk, you're going to be a jerk when you get famous. And if you're not a jerk, if you're a guy like Smokey, you just get more.
I like that, yeah.
That is the most absolute truth. You know,
yeah.
Fame makes you more of what you already are.
That's a really good thing. I never heard that. I think that's really terrific.
Yeah. Because jerks, I mean, you know, I've done an awful lot of award shows and this thing, and you get a brief glimpse of some of the new young talent.
Yes.
And they're ridiculous. They're so arrogant in their feeling of entitlement.
Yes.
You don't know whose shoulders you stand on, brother. You know.
Or want to know. Unfortunately, some kids said, well, they're not interested.
Right.
Oh, well, you know what? Cause and effect, because they'll find out. They'll find out in the long run when it hits them, and it happens to them. They're going to be in such shock. It's, you know, even what's happening now in our country, you know, it's still there, ready to take over. And when they get the treatment that the folks who really worked hard to get, that's going to get the shock of their lives.
I had a conversation with my God, I can't remember his name. Oh, Julian. My cousin is Julian Bunt.
Oh,
and we were having Julian Bunt, yeah, and we were talking about the fact that there's not the fire in the belly that there used to be back in the day when we were marching and acting crazy and all that. Mm-hmm. Because everybody thinks, well, you know, Obama is post-racial America. It's worse today than it was in the 60s to me, you know. When I watch it, I see it, it's like, how can anybody believe that, you know, racism is over? Racism's horrifyingly bad right now. I mean, think about how
it's been hiding all this time.
Just want him to be out of office because he's a black man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not whatever job he's doing, and maybe he's not doing such a great job, maybe he is, but they're not judging him on the job. They're judging him on the fact that he is a black man in the White House, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous to the prevailing attitude that everything is all good and joyful now.
You have to know your surroundings, you really do, and then you have to work around them. Like we all did, you know. We knew that there was that there, and we managed to work around it and deal with it. But we always knew it was there, so it's no surprise if it hits you. You know, like when I couldn't dance with Glenn Tetley on the Ed Sullivan Show, it didn't surprise me any. Because that was the way, you know. But at that time also, not only did you have that, you had to raise your hand and say, "I'm not a member of the Communist Party."
That's right.
Let's add that on.
Really
so you deal with it, and like Geoffrey said, you get on with it. Otherwise, you can't let it stunt your growth.
You have to get on with it, or it'll eat you up. By
That's right.
Too many people that have been just totally destroyed by it.
Yeah. But you know, I've had wonderful experience, you know, because I've been in my problem is that I've been in, you know, I've tasted the nightclubs, you know, with Pearl Bailey, and I've been in the Metropolitan Opera choreographing and being a soloist in it, and I've done theater and I've done nightclubs, and I've done just every kind of conceivable, and worked with jazz musicians like Ellington and Willie Ruff and Bill Evans and Benny Goodman and people like that. Actually worked with them as dancer, as a performer, and concert, great opera people, and I've gone in every kind of different direction, which is really, I didn't make very much money all this time, but that's not the point. But you know what? It's such a rich experience of that I'm having and still having. And still meeting people, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, you know, and because it makes the world, you know, you begin looking at it, then you see the world is what it is, you know, and we're all, it's kind of silly to think that you're special when there are so many special people in the world, you know, and that we're all...
Yeah, but there's special people and then there's special. Yeah. There is a difference. You know, I used to say everybody's created equal, but some of us are more equal than others.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. You know, you are.
But I think you have to thank the people that paved the way.
Oh,
because you know that you have to respect the past. You have to respect the past. Your past does not start. You know, it goes a long. You know, we're a gazillion years old, and I would just think somebody got through. Somebody got through. Yeah. But yeah, no, but I want to just. Oh, I just want to say, you know, and all this that I'm doing, you know, and I really have to, you know, getting back to Geoffrey, that he's allowed it. He's allowed me to be who I am and to experience all these places, you know, going to Southeast Asia and all the experiences there and things like that. Otherwise, I know friends that whose partners and husbands would not allow that, and they just sort of stayed in one place.
Well, you kind of got married in a time when women basically stayed home and were wives.
True.
Right?
True.
Yeah, so, yes, bravo, Geoffrey, for encouraging you to do all that you've done, because it's been such a remarkable thing. But tell me this, why do you think that both you and Geoffrey have had such longevity in what you're doing? Not just, life, but your creative dimensions. Why have you been so successful so long?
Exactly, the reason why is because we allow each other to be ourselves.
Pretty good stuff.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And I think we're done.
Oh.
Unless something else you want to say. Is there something else that you want to make sure is in the... Because, I'm going to chop this
I know.
all up.
Yeah, I know.
And, make little different videos.
But I think that's...
different...
Yeah. But I think that's... But, I don't know if this is even tie into anything. Because the women are rising again. And I think when the balance is equally, everybody carries the load together and listens to each other's viewpoint, the better off we are. But then again, I'm looking at what's going on now, and I can't believe what some of the women are saying. As far as, life and looking upon and being, we're supposed to be the nurturers. Well, it's kind of hard to realize some of the ladies would even, what they're saying. But then there you are again. You're just human beings, and we're all alike in a way, aren't we? Male and female.
We are. The more you travel, the more you know that.
Yeah. Yeah, but there are some really great people in the world, and I think I've met them all, and not all of them, but a lot of them.